This is how to get ahead of 99% of people by doing less. Because that's the dream, isn't it? Imagine beating all your competition and still doing less work than them. But before we can get into how all this is actually possible, we need to set the scene. So when I was younger, I knew I never wanted to be average. I saw the life that the adults were living around me, and I knew that that wasn't the life that I wanted for myself. I realized that if I did what everyone else does, then I'll become like everyone else. I knew that if I wanted to live an extraordinary life, I needed to be extraordinary myself. I simply couldn't just do what everyone else does. There's a quote from Alex Hormozi that sums up my observations quite well. Most people live the same 6 months 100 times and then they die. And I really want you to keep this in the back of your mind as we go through this video, because that's the thing that we're constantly going to be coming back to. You cannot beat your competition if you're doing what your competition does. There really is something to be said when every story of an underdog contains a training montage of the main character putting his hardest effort in, working as hard as he possibly can, improving and then eventually achieving the goal. And we as viewers love watching these type of stories. We absolutely lap this shit up. I mean, even myself, these training montages is generally my favorite part of these type of movies. And it's easy to see why. There's a sense of nobility in aiming up to something that you want to achieve and then trying your absolute hardest at it. Because what other choice do you have? Everyone knows the truth. Everyone knows that anyone that has done anything has only achieved it because they put the work in. There's simply no other option. But this leads me to believe that there's something else going on here. That hard work just can't be the only parameter for success, because hard work is just such a common advice that we all know it. So I want you to imagine a tunnel and 100 people with dreams, aspirations and goals walk into the tunnel. But you only see 3 people emerge out the other side. And so you go up to these 3 people and you ask them, how did you do it? How did you achieve this success? How did you get through the tunnel? And they will tell you, well, I worked really fucking hard. That there is a survivor bias, because you only see the 3 people come through and hear what they have to say. You do not see the rest of the 97 people who worked really hard at it and died, who lost their lives, who gave up. There is more going on in that tunnel than just hard work. If you've been around the self-improvement space for a while, you probably are familiar with Malcolm Gladwell's concept of 10,000 hours. It's the amount of time necessary to become an expert and achieve mastery at anything that you want to improve in. But I also think that it's misleading. Let's take Warren Buffett as an example. He is the richest investor of our time, and clearly he's an expert in what he does. But very few people actually know some key facts about his success. I learned in the psychology of money that 90% of Buffett's returns came from just 10 investments, and 96% of his wealth was made after his 65th birthday. So yes, Warren probably spent way more than 10,000 hours reading financial reports and studying stocks, but it still came down to very few decisions and also time in the market that accumulated to his massive amount of success. What we're talking about here is the Pareto principle. You probably heard that 20% of something gets 80% of something else. And we see this happening everywhere in life. On YouTube, 80% of a channel's views come from 20% of the videos. In business, 80% of a company's sales come from 20% of their products. In the universe, 80% of all masses of stars come from 20% of the stars. These aren't real numbers, by the way, but they would be pretty close to how reality actually is. So what this tells us is almost everything doesn't matter and very few things actually matter. That's a quote from Essentialism by Greg McKeown. This is why Alex Hormozi pumps out so much content on social media. He understands that if he just increases the volume of the content out there, it raises the chances that one of them will do really well. This is why that the best shooters in basketball and the best hitters in baseball are the guys who took the most shots and took the most swings. It's all about volume. And that is exactly what everyone is optimizing for. I think the general rule that follows everyone's success story is almost everything will amount to nothing. But when you get those few things right for long enough, under the right conditions, at the right time, you don't just win, you win big. Those 3 guys that emerged from the tunnel, well, they emerged from the tunnel because they stayed in the game long enough, consistently doing the right things to eventually win, and win big. In the words of Alex Suljung Kim Pang in his book called Rest, this is how we come to believe that world-class performance comes after 10,000 hours of practice, but that's wrong. It comes after 10,000 hours of deliberate practice, 12,500 hours of deliberate rest, and 30,000 hours of deliberate sleep. What does deliberate practice actually look like? And let's take an easy example of me wanting to improve my bench press in the gym. Since I want to get better at that movement, I have to do that movement more often. But the way I do the reps is actually really important. I can't just slide myself underneath the bar and then throw the weight around in between sets of talking to my mate, because then I'm not focusing on technique and I don't have the intentional focus that I need to have to get really good at this. I want to be so deliberate with my technique that each rep that I do looks identical to any other rep that I do. And then it's just a matter of increasing the weight over time. So with deliberate technique and progressive overload, success and improvement is guaranteed. So that's deliberate practice when you're in the gym. But what about the rest of your time when you're not in the gym? What does deliberate rest look like? Well, deliberate rest is about creating a lifestyle that fosters recovery in the goal that you want to have. And since we're talking specifically about getting stronger in the gym, there is really only a couple things that you have to make sure that you get right. The first is your diet, making sure that you're eating enough protein and enough total calories to repair that muscle damage that occurred through the session. And the second thing is really to avoid your pitfalls, like staying up really late at night and not getting enough sleep, because sleep is truly one of the most important things for recovery. And that brings us to deliberate sleep. And Matt Walker in Why We Sleep laid this out pretty clearly for us. Quality, quantity, regularity, and timing. But I really think that if we just prioritize getting to bed at the same time every night and then waking up at the same time every morning, both quantity and quality will fall into place. If I'm training hard with good technique, I'm eating enough food and sufficient protein, and I'm getting enough sleep, then my bench press has no choice but to improve. I think this is all there is to the broad strokes of people's success journeys. They work really hard, they rest really hard, so that they can come back and do the thing with just as much intensity as they did before, and they continue that time in and time out until they win, and they win big. And that's all for this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.